How many people are joining us today? You don't know until you get on.
We're on.
All right.
Hopefully it's a lot of people, or they'll watch later. Hey guys, happy Friday! Happy Friday! I was gonna get up and do my little happy dance, but
Do it.
I'm gonna keep it clean for the kids.
Dance a jig. There you go. There it is.
Okay.
Happy Friday, guys! Thank you.
Happy Friday.
Thank you so much.
Friday.
Yes, Mila is
Are you
over
still
here
dancing
ordering.
in heels, Tiffany?
Oh, you come on now, Greg. Till the day I die.
You still
know
dancing
what?
with your broken feet? Your feet are all broken up.
They are broken. And the day I die, till the day I die, I'm going to be dancing in heels. And in my casket, I want glitter, sparkle, like 9-inch heels, platforms.
Glass.
I want them to do me like how they did Aretha Franklin.
You want what kind of heels you want? You want the glass ones that you wear with in the competitions?
That's it.
I don't know how you balance on those.
They are actually not that bad. They're very comfortable.
How big is the heel? 3 inches?
It's like this in the front, and it's like that in the back.
So that's like 4 or 5 inches.
Oh, they're 6. Mine are 6.5. Yes. Oh yeah. All right. Well, I hope you guys are doing great on this Friday night. Maybe some of you guys are going out wearing your 6.5-inch heels. But I am here.
They call them lifts for men.
They call them what?
Lifts.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lifts.
Well, is that an Italian thing? Because we're Italian. Because a lot of these short spuccones are wearing lifts.
That's right. A lot of Latino men too wear lifts.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not going to mention any names like Pitbull, but Pitbull's really this big in real life, but with his lifts, he's about my height.
I said Dr. Pepper.
Mila orders DoorDash, and she comes over here with this big bag of Italian food and this.
Oh.
Party over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So, guys, we're just going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, I am here with the infamous Delcore brothers, okay?
Infamous.
They are, you guys are legends. You're infamous. And I am so ecstatic always to see your shining, beautiful faces. And that you guys actually deal with me. Hello, who's ever on? Hey. So we just want to talk about, or I wanted you guys to talk about your classes and the difference between your classes. And I need to make a quick run, starting with Greg, your intro classes, and Mark, yours. You guys are really good at talking, so I'll be right back.
Talk about each class? All right,
yes.
I can give like a general sort of
synopsis. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I can't see anyone except for Mark. But generally what's going on here is, we're here to sort of give our take on how things, it's like a shortcut rather than go through all the steps in the years and the decades that we've had to endure prior to the internet, prior to social media and all that stuff, the sort of nuts and bolts of how to do things. We've come up with systems and techniques to streamline everything, to taper it to each individual person, so that if you're frustrated and you're sitting there and you're saying, I don't know, I don't think I know enough, I don't think I can, how do I perform? How do I get my stuff to the next level? I have a track or a vocal melody, I don't know how to finish it. So what we can do is that we can sort of like diagnose what you're doing and see what the situation is and supplement it, complement it on our end, the best we know how, so that you at least feel like you're in some kind of spot that you're getting something out of it. Sometimes information is just information. If you can't use it, if you can't apply it and see what it's actually for, it's just a bunch of words, new words that you're learning and stuff. So we try to see what's already there, work with what everyone has, and then just expand upon that. Now everyone's different, so if you're in a class with different people, you might be getting different angles and different concepts and different ways to go around things. But it's all helpful in the end to sort of get everybody where they want to be. Um, so the key word in all these classes is intro, because we're sort of like laying it out for you, giving you what it is that you have to sort of be aware of, and then slowly kind of get into it. And everyone's going to take out of it what they want. So it's not like you have to learn every single thing or every technique, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be useful to everybody. And then you just sort of, like everything else, it's going to be original. You just take what you can and sort of like put it into whatever you're trying to do and see if it's going to complement you or enhance what you're doing. So there's really no like one way to explain anything, but obviously if you're taking a music theory class, we're talking about how music functions in the bigger sense, right? Theory is just a fancy word for explaining something. We can sit here and talk about language and how language works in a sentence. There's a noun, there's a verb, right? That's all boring. So what we try to do is, you got to speak in order to understand how to use the language. So the same thing with music. It's how you integrate theory, how you integrate certain techniques on how to record. What is the basis of all recording? Why does it function that way? How can you create in a recording studio? And then songwriting, which is the same thing, learning the age-old techniques so that you can start to write and create your own music. So there's definitely steps involved, and there's different things that can be used, but there's no way to just generalize it to everybody, because everyone's different, as it should be, right, Mark?
Yeah. And I think, when you bring up the point, shortcut, and it's not shortcut in like the traditional sense of like skipping steps. A lot of the people that I'm interacting with in TCS, some people give it to you straight. They're like, I don't need to learn how to read music. I don't want to
Right.
I don't want to do that. So, in the bigger sense of what someone needs to achieve to get themselves to their end result, reading music and being able to read like, tablature or like chord charts may not be in their bigger equation. So without inundating someone with that type of instruction and having it become like tedious and laborious, we try to like tailor fit what's best for the actual person and what's going to get them to their ultimate goals in a fast tracking sort of mode. A lot of people nowadays don't need, like really good songwriters don't necessarily have to be great players, or they don't really need to have all this knowledge. If a song comes out of you organically and naturally, that's really all you need to like worry about. Forcing the issue and having all this knowledge in your head, sometimes some people don't know how to process it. So we don't really, tend to avoid that type of laborious information in someone's head, so they can get to the nuts and bolts of writing. I'm still surprised at how many people are writing good music, but they don't have any way to actually record it or to put it down onto something where you can step back, being able to record it, even like a voice note, which is sort of seems like the norm of people. They'll get an idea and they'll use a voice note. I use voice notes when I'm in the car. If something comes in my head and I'm driving, I don't have a studio at my disposal. There's a bigger story of that when my brother and I owned a van. When Greg had graduated Berkeley, we owned a van. We turned that van literally into a mobile recording studio. And we did that for a minute. So amongst other things, but we won't get into that. That's another live stream.
Greg's always the one that's going to tell it all.
Yeah. So, I'll use a voice note just to document an idea that I have in my head so I don't lose it or whatever. So, you know, in my recording classes, even in my songwriting classes, I'll get a voice note from one of the students with a song, and the song may only be like a verse. It might not even have a hook, and I'll take the verse that they have. It might just be acoustic guitar and voice, and I'll try to shape that out with a drum loop, a bass track, a guitar track, and like a basic Rhodes track, or like, you know, some sort of synth track where they can listen to their song in a completely different setting than just sitting there and, like, you know, if like you're playing it, you can't step outside yourself and listen to what you need to work on. So I really try to advocate that with some of the students to send me whatever you have as part of my class. I'm going to do that as a service because I think it's important to be able to step outside yourself. And, you know, I've had the luxury, as well as Greg, our whole lives of having each other to bounce ideas off of. Greg will come to me with an idea, and when he gives it to me, he's able to step outside of himself as a writer and become a listener to whatever it is that I'm adding to a song that he'll give me, and vice versa. So that's been a valuable tool for me, just having somebody else available to listen and to bounce ideas off of. And not everyone has that luxury. I mean, Greg and I were raised very close. We're 14 months apart. We were both raised around music, and the environment sort of like sucked us in. I don't really think I had a choice. I think music chose me as well as it chose Greg. So having that as a luxury, I'm trying to extend that to people who may not have a sibling or they don't have a writing partner. I'm trying to be like that buffer for people so they can step outside of a song that they've been working on for a month, 2 weeks, an hour, whatever it is. They're able to listen to a song with a different take, whatever my take is on that song. So, you know, that's sort of what my philosophy's been in the songwriting class, just helping people document their ideas. Doesn't have to be, you know, a next hit record, but just something that frames out the song so they can, you know, have a better idea of how to develop a hook and how to develop like melodic ideas.
And also, that's a good point. You know, to also explain, instead of going, you know, normally if you go to like a music college or you're taking a music course, they're going to start you with, you know, they're going to start you with a scale. They're going to add a second note to the scale called intervals. Then you go to triads. Then you go to, you know, seventh chords, 4-note groupings, arpeggios, right? They start small and then they. So if you're a writer, let's say, and you wrote a song, but you don't know what it is, well, we can help you kind of like dissect it and be like, well, to break it down, instead of learning all these different steps to go through, you know, you don't need to learn arpeggios, but your bass line might be an arpeggio because most of the times they are, right? Which is basically a chord just playing single notes from the chord. So instead of getting hung up on jargon, on words, we can say, okay, well, your bass line is a great example of a root inversion arpeggio. So there's your music knowledge, right? But you don't need to then go through every chord structure, every
Right.
sequence to
Yeah, yeah,
learn the arpeggios. I mean,
yes.
if you really did want to do that, we can help you with that as well, right? But like Mark is saying about a song, if you come with like a kernel of an idea of a song, where does it go from there? And what is your kernel? You know, what is this idea you have? Are you just playing chords? Are you playing single notes? Is it vocal melody heavy? Or is your vocal melody sort of like just going with the chord changes? So we can kind of help you concentrate on what you're working on to expand upon it without giving you a lot of like heavy duty theory and stuff
Overload.
like
Yeah.
that. Should
Definitely.
complement what you're doing and help you kind of navigate, but that's not what this is. This is sort of like we can explain to you what it is, but the goal is what are you trying to do? So we try to incorporate the music knowledge, but at the same time help, you know, advance what you're trying to do because you'll just be stuck on arpeggios for like 5 years. You know how that is.
Right, right,
Or
right.
inversions, you can play whatever. You can play a C major chord, or in this first inversion, it's more like an E minor chord. Once you start going into that stuff, then you're going to be sitting there going, well, then what is my chord? That's not what this is. This is just trying to explain things in a very digestible way. And then, having us as sort of like the experts to try to like guide you through that process. Once you get to the end of it, then you'll be like, okay, now I understand how the journey works. But you have to take that first step and go through it. And then we help encourage it, enhance it with different things. And then we'll explain it as we go along. But there's no need for everyone to start with, C major scale,
Yes,
and
yeah.
here we go. And now there's only 11 more. There's only 11 more keys to go through after that. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when you say that, it brings me back to when I was at Berkeley studying all these scales, major scales, right? Minor scales, traditional minor, harmonic minor, right? Modes, all the right, and then when you get to the end of learning all that, I mean, literally, how many hundreds of
Yeah.
hundreds of scales, right?
Maybe even more, because then if you put those scales into modes, you get 7
Exactly.
other scales based upon that scale. So
you're talking hundreds of scales, and thankfully, my brother and I, we had very advanced hearing when we were younger. So like, I adore Billy Joel. He's the reason why I became a piano player. So I would walk up to, like, we had an old organ. I don't know if you remember, like that double-decker organ.
Yeah.
This is before we even had a piano in the house. I was like maybe 6 or 7, and I walked up to the organ and I just started playing Just the Way You Are. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was, don't go changing, and I would play the melody, and my parents, were in the corner like, okay, now it's time to exploit this. And you start off with the piano teacher learning C major, and then you go to D major, E major, and then when you get to the flat and sharp keys, you're like, all the fingerings change as a piano player. So, you get through Berkeley and you get through all these scales to really learn that there's only one scale, and it's like a chromatic scale. But you have to learn it organically from the ground up so you can understand how a chromatic scale works and how all the notes are really relative. That's why I feel I was hammered with these, Berkeley teachers who would jam down modes and scales, and it's like wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi. You don't really know what the end result is going to be. You're just like, I can't go to the movie with my friends on the weekend because I have like 50 scales that I have to learn before my final exam at the piano. And I'm glad that I forced myself to get through that. Of course, I had Greg, who had already been through a lot of the stuff that I entered. And we were talking the other night. Greg, I remember when he came home from his, like, I don't know how long you had been at Berkeley, but you were there at least 6 months or whatever. I was still in high school. And you were talking about solfege. And I was like, what the hell is solfege? And when he explained it to me, I was like, I'll never be able to do that. And I became fearful of solfeging in class, in whatever class. It was solfege 1 through 5 or 1 through 4. So I started working on that like the summer into my junior year in high school. I started to look at music and just sing it and not even play it, being able to identify. So having done that led me to, okay, this is why I'm learning these scales from my piano teacher, because it's going to get me to a much better place when I'm in class, in a solfege class with singers, with these brilliant people who can literally look at music and sing it perfectly in the key. But then the other side of that is, if you take the music away, some of these people didn't know what to do. They needed the information in front of them to be able to function. And I've seen that in a lot of like classical players who may not know how to improvise, which is another thing that we always try to add, like just let people know that there's another way besides just reading music and whatever the notes are in front of you. There's a whole other side of like improv and being able to riff and, getting people to that point, through scales, not beating a dead horse, but certainly having some knowledge of at least C major, all the degrees of the scale, and how those will help you in songwriting. Having a little bit of vocabulary is better than having none,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, how does it? Why? Like a lot of it, and I'm sure a lot of people out there. Why is this? What am I doing, and why? Right. So that's what Mark was referring to. Is it helps? It's like learning how to cook, right? There's certain things that are obvious, and there's certain things that, well, wow, I can add salt to something that's kind of sweet to give it to kind of offset the balance of the flavor, right? Until someone tells you how to do that and why that happens, you don't really know. You're just kind of guessing, right? So a lot of these schools, what they do is they take you step by step through each ingredient. And then at the end, you're supposed to be able to make your own soup or something, from it. But we're shortcutting it in the sense where you don't need to learn 18 scales, because the one scale that your song is using will utilize these components. So we'll concentrate on just that. It's going to be very tapered to the student. Now, if you want to expand upon your knowledge and learn all the different things that are out there, improvisation, because let's remember, Mark and I, what is it, Mark? 30 years, maybe 30 years ago, we were in this situation at school, right? I graduated in 92 from Berkeley, so that's 30 years this year. It was a completely different landscape.
Well, y'all's ages. That's right.
It was, at that time, there were still solos in music. I don't hear solos anymore. Does anyone out there hear solos? I'm not talking about Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin was in the 70s, okay? I'm talking about today. I'm playing a bunch of Foo Fighters songs and some of the groups that I work with in a school that I'm working with out here. There's no solos. There's no solos in that music. There's no solos in grunge music for the most part. Pearl Jam a little bit, but Kurt Cobain wasn't known for his soloing skills, right? So you have to imagine that the emphasis is on melody, which it kind of should be, and the harmony and what kind of rhythm is going on. To expand upon that already happened. It seems like people are not interested in improvisation on a theme to expand it, because that's what music theory basically does, is that it takes a little tiny kernel and it expands it and expands it and expands it, and it makes it into something completely different. No one's interested in that. With all due respect, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm interested in it, but it's not something that's relevant. So to learn inversions and different variations is just, if you want to do something like that, we can help you. But let's be real, right? Like what's going on right now.
You know what? That was my next question, was how you feel about that in relation to how music is nowadays and what's going on now.
It's very one-dimensional. If you really want to know what music's about, go back a couple hundred years. Go back to what Beethoven was doing. A lot of people say that sounds cliche, but he wasn't working with no multi-track. He had his brain, and that was it, and a keyboard. So layers on layers on layers of music. That's not happening anymore. It's very one-dimensional. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. And people seem to be using the same 2 ways these days. No disrespect to what's going on, but it just, there's not a lot of variety. How I feel personally about it, it's kind of sad. Because there's a lot more out there. Out there.
And like, some of the songwriting students, they write these songs that are great vocal melody, but there's only 4 chords in the whole song.
Yeah.
And not to talk about who we've worked with, but working with Brittany for 18 years, pop music, when I started with her in 2000, and we finished in 2018. And just the evolution of the music that was she wrote, and that, you know, Max Martin, who is one of her, he wrote all the hits for Backstreet Boys and Sync. You know, he had a formula in the early 2000s that, you know, certifiable hit maker. The guy is just knows how to write a hit song. But then you see how the evolution of the music got simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler from 2000 to 2015, 16. You look at a song like Till the World Ends. It's literally 3 chords, the whole song. And what makes the song have the peaks and the valleys is the instrumentation and like the production, slipping out the kick drum, breaking down a section, you know, vocal harmony. It all gives the song some, it has to be that way because for me as a listener, after I hear 4 chords, I'm like, okay, next. I get very bored easily. And that's just how I am. That's just my personal preference. I want to hear a bridge. I want to hear something in the song. Like, you know, I use this example all the time. When you watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, when you sit down and watch the movie, you don't know what's going to happen in the movie because he's telling a story. And I like that aspect of the way that he writes movies and the way that he directs movies, is that you don't know what's going to happen in the movie. You know, you sit down and you watch Iron Man, you know what's going to happen. You watch an Avengers movie, you know what's going to happen. But songwriting, I think, has lost that aspect of a story being told, not only vocally, but instrumentation-wise. You know, there's so much more you can add to a vocal melody and to a lyrical content by just the instrumentation. I'm working on this song right now. It's actually it's a benefit for the Ukraine, what's going on in the Ukraine. And a bunch of guys from Boston that I worked with sent me this song. Hey, we'd love for you to be involved in it. And these guys are about 8, 9, 10 years older than I am. And they were my mentors when I was growing up. I was 15, 16 years old. I knew these guys very well. Kook Lowry, Craig Spinney, Steve Chagaris, Brian Mays. And they reached out to me to kind of help them with this. And instantly when I put the song up on the studio chopping block and I listened to it, it brought me right back. And I said to myself, I said, this is exactly what I would expect from these guys. The lyrical content, it was very like Creedence, like Clearwater Revival vibe. That's where I see Greg is trying to keep it together.
Allies reunion.
Exactly, right? So there was a band that I was in called the Allies, and it was a 4-piece band. It was Steve Chagaris on drums, who was a childhood friend of me and my brother. Still to this day, you know, we stay in touch. And him and I were in a band with Kook Lowry, who's done, he is a legendary like Boston guitar player. He played with Robert Ellis Oral. He played with Jay Giles and Peter Wolf. And, you know, Brian Mays is a staple of Boston. He's been around.
Not Brian May.
No, not Brian May of
Right.
Queen. Brian Mays.
Right.
Who is like legendary. Yeah, legendary Boston singer, keyboard player, played in a band called RTZ, Return to Zero, with some of the guys in Boston. And, you know, these guys were always so nurturing and giving and wanting to extend what information they have. So that's what inspired me and my brother to always stay in some kind of educational aspect of what we're doing. As you kind of progress along your journey to get to wherever you're going to go, you got to give back to people. And those guys gave me so much love and knowledge that when I got the call to work on this Allies reunion, I said, absolutely. It's for a great cause. What's going on in Europe is a whole other ball of wax I don't want to get into because I'm very passionate about things like that. So I started recording some stuff last night, and the more I got into the song, the more I got reminded of how my climb started with these guys. And the song is great. At some point, I'm sure when it's done, I'll be able to like play it for you guys.
Yeah.
And it's super rock. The name of the song is Molotov Cocktail.
Oh.
Because
Is
they're
it-
all made, They're all making,
Is hold on now. Is Chigaris? They're all playing on it.
yeah.
Craig Spinney's singing it.
I really shouldn't be talking about
don't
it
give it away, but
because
it's those guys though. It's the same lineup.
yeah,
How did they get back together? This is crazy. How
you
did
know,
they?
well, Craig, if you know Craig, he sent me. It was great to hear from him, and he sent me an email. He was like, "I'm really upset about what's going on. What's going on over there, and I don't feel like I can do anything." So this was his way to release his frustration about what's going on in Europe right now, and that's a perfect example of using music to shed emotions and to be able to, if you're having a bad day, you get a flat tire, you're pissed off about it, you can write a song. That's what music does for me. I know for Greg too. It's a therapeutic way to expunge some emotion. So when Craig sent me this and he sent me the track, I listened to it right away and I said, this is exactly what I would expect from these guys. And it's wonderful. Wonderful song. So
Well, I wanted to pick up on something that you said about Britney, which if people out there never saw the show, you would right away when you came to see it that last time that she did it. None of the songs, maybe like 5 songs, 6 songs, we did as the original version of the song. But I'm going to pick up on this point because a good song can be done anyway. When it's a good song, you can do anything to it. So her whole idea for the residency is she's like, I don't want to do that 90s pop stuff.
yeah.
I want to do a rock show. This is what she wanted, right? So I want to do like kind of dark, a little gothic, right? And we were like, wow, that's, really? That's pop music? No, I want to do it like this because I'm tired of doing it the old way. Okay, great. So we recreated the entire show, like I said, with the exception of like a few songs. Completely different. Baby One More Time was not the version that was released, right? All these other songs were done like a rock sort of heavier version. It still had the components, but that's the other thing that I think is missing a little bit in today's music is the variety that can be used. Everyone's going for the same stupid halftime beat.
Someone just asked a question and they said, is it because listeners are, this is Stacy, my trainer. Hey. Is it because listeners are lazier with their ears now?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Not to jump on that question, but I've been saying this for at least 10, 15 years that people nowadays listen to music with their eyes.
Right.
I'm old enough to remember when MTV came out. My brother and I, we used to go to our grandmother's in Everett, Mass., which was one of the only places that had cable TV. It was the only place that we could watch MTV.
Right.
Because we grew up in Linfield, Massachusetts, and Linfield at that particular time in the early stages of cable television didn't have the cable actually in the ground or on like the telephone pole. So we couldn't get cable. So every time that we went to our grandmother's on the weekends, we would watch the same 8 music videos, and that really did change the landscape of music. Yeah, you had Dick Clark, you had American Bandstand, even Soul Train, where you would have like artists would get, and we watched Soul Train religiously because our mother, that's what we got from our mother. We got the Earth, Wind and Fire, the Stevie Wonder. Yeah. From my father, we got Chicago and Buddy Rich and jazz and swing. So we had a good balance between all these different genres of music. And we used to watch Solid Gold and, and it was, it wasn't MTV. It wasn't creating mini movies. And as MTV got bigger and bigger, and when like Duran Duran came out, and a lot of people don't realize this about Duran Duran, but Duran Duran made MTV what it is today. Had it not been for a band like Duran Duran, who at the time was like the NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys, these guys were really playing instruments. They were a band, but people became so infatuated with the look and, you know, the way that people were creating these mini movies that it's almost like society dictated that people were going to take a back seat using their ears. They were going to visualize it. I can't watch videos. Like a lot of songs that I think I would like, I don't tend to like them because something in the video annoys me. So it turns me off from the actual song. So I try not to listen to, or I should say watch videos. If I hear a song and it's on MTV or it's on some music station, I tend to look away just to hear the song. So I'm not swayed by the image, you know? I remember Tears for Fears used to annoy me because the singer had this weird jaw, his jaw. So like, but I listen to Tears for Fears now on Spotify or on the radio, and I'm like, man, that's a damn good band. They wrote some really good songs. But the videos, I wasn't in, like, just from, I think, where Greg and I came from, like, you know, Italian family, you don't hold back. You, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you know, like, you're getting called out every second of the day about something. You really going to wear that? Are you going out right now? You're going to wear that? Really dressed like that?
You look like a bum.
Yeah, it's almost like a curse too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't know if, you know, and being Italian, you know, that's just Italian culture. We talk and we air it out, and we really, you guys are playing this weekend. You're gonna wear that? Yeah. Why? Why? What's wrong? Oh, okay.
Well, Mark, that's really interesting you're saying this because these days, these times that we're living in now, you're supposed to be very careful about
Oh,
critici-
yeah.
criticizing people,
Oh, no.
defining people. But you know what? In a lot of ways, when you have to fight for something, it really ignites your passion, and it really hones you in on what you're trying to do. If everything is just so easy to get, then where are you going with it? Like, what is your direction? Sometimes you got to fight for your direction, and you have to have some kind of resistance in order to know if what you're doing is even worth it, because the kind of fight that you're going to put up against something is really going to determine how successful it is. And it seems like nowadays it's like, well, don't say that and don't say this. You know, I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And
That's
you can't level the playing field for everything. There's certain things that require a passion. So when people say, well,
Yeah.
God, how did they write this song or that song? Well, I mean, you don't know what they were up against in order to write that song, or what was coming out of them, excuse me, organically to make that song happen. If everything was just so easy breezy and no one hurt anyone's feelings and all this other stuff, then the music would reflect that. And I think that's what's going on today. The music is just, you know, if I hear one more thing with auto tune, I think I'm going to drive my car into a mountain. I can't stand it.
Well, I was, not to interrupt you, Greg, but I remember talking to some of the students in my class about being careful of these people who, you know, they're on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. Let me teach you how to write a hook. And the whole time that they're teaching, you know, they got the nice background with the strip lights and the hue lights, and it's purple and it's green. And it looks great. So this goes to like the question that was just asked. This person's teaching how to write a hook, and it's almost like they're teaching how to look while you're teaching someone to write a hook, because it was more about the makeup and the whole time this particular very young female was teaching people how to write hooks. She's singing through auto tune. She's using a looper. She's using, and I said, well, that's kind of like, I mean, it's not false advertising because she's like literally singing into the microphone, and you hear her real voice, and then you hear what's being fixed and like corrected. And some people like that sound. It's like, you know, I don't wear plaid. Some people love plaid. I know Burberry's a huge thing, right? These like plaid scarves, right? I think
Right.
Burberry's great. Not necessarily for me. I wouldn't walk around with that, but someone might like that. So music is like that. It's subjective. But to answer the question, I think people have gotten extremely lazy when it comes to listening. I mean, students come in, they write a song, it's a minute and a half. I said, if you want to make the song 11 minutes, that's kind of what I grew up. I remember getting records, Led Zeppelin records, and songs are 10 minutes long. Even like some of the early Rush rock stuff, like all that progressive rock music, you'd be lucky if you found a song under 8 minutes, because it took that long for the song to develop and to evolve. And people don't have 8 minutes. No, I got to go, do something, or I don't have that kind of time to listen. And there was a time you put the record on the turntable and you listen to the record from top to bottom, without having any type of things to like distract you, except for reading
And
the.
now it's all about singles, the single, which
Yeah.
kind of destroyed the whole sort of like journey of what an album was. That was just like
Yeah.
one collection of music. And then the next album would be like a different exploration. But if you're just talking about singles, it's really hard to, if you're like getting into Led Zeppelin, like Mark just said, he brought up Led Zeppelin, great example. If you started in 1968 or 1978, those are two huge, they're like 1,000 miles apart from each other. How would you know which is the Led Zeppelin? They went through a process where they developed, and they became more sophisticated, and that what was going on at the time influenced them, like it does with everybody. Except for nowadays, people are just like, yeah, just slap like a reggaeton beat on there and we're done, Like, why are we going to spend all this time trying to create something new when no one's going to be interested? The average attention span is, what is it, 8 seconds? Someone hears a song 8 seconds and they're like, nah, next. We didn't have that luxury, and I think that says something to the quality of the music, and the intention of the music. When you got like whatever, I don't know how many millions of people are releasing music on Spotify a week. I mean, how do you even discern what is even quality? Who is the next Led Zeppelin? Who is the next Bruce Springsteen or whoever? Like, it doesn't exist, So a lot of it is, what I try to do when I'm teaching something is, let's go back to the roots of whatever it is. Like, if you like John Mayer, for example, I'm not crazy about John Mayer. There's nothing wrong with John Mayer, but when you grew up with Stevie Ray Vaughan, why would you want to listen to John Mayer? I'm just saying. I mean, it's like he's like a Stevie Ray Vaughan light, okay? But that's his. John Mayer was obsessed with Stevie Ray Vaughan. So if you like John Mayer, if you check out Stevie Ray Vaughan, you're going to see a lot of similarities. If you like Stevie Ray Vaughan, well, who did he like? Who did he listen to? He was really into Hendrix, amongst other people.
Yeah.
So then check out Jimi Hendrix, and you're like, wow, Jimi Hendrix, that's pretty insane. What was Jimi Hendrix being inspired by? At that time, the Beatles. So then you go into the Beatles, right? So it's this like sort of like backtrack where you see like, oh, okay, this is where it came from. This is where, and this is what they did with it. They took it and they made it their own. Like, if I write a song right now and sing it and then give it to Tiffany, she's going to sing it like Tiffany, right? She's not going to sing it like, whatever. I mean, that's all that she can put into it is what she knows. So that's going to change it somehow. If I give it a Mark to slap on some keyboards and come up with some kind of groove, it's going to radically change from the idea that I had in my head. And because we have three different people with three distinct backgrounds, different colors and flavors that can be put into it, that doesn't really happen these days.
Yeah, right.
It's some guy who's like putting the tour together, who happens to be in the studio taking notes, and he's like, yeah, why don't you use one of those new terms? Like, yeah, let's put that in the song. And then all of a sudden the song you hear, and like he gets like, 5% songwriting credit.
And you're saying, all right.
Yeah.
Right.
I am. I'm saying all right.
Someone just said, my spin class 60s, 80s playlist is 10 to 12 songs long because the songs are at least 5 minutes long. When I create 2010, And newer music, my playlist is 20 to 30 songs long because each song is only 2 minutes long.
Yeah, and that goes to how I was trying to explain the evolution, even just from 2000 to now. Okay, you take a 20-year, like a 22-year period, music got simplified. I forget the name of the institution, but there was an institution, a university in Spain that did an analysis of music and where it has gone from, Debussy. They didn't start from the early time, but they started like at Debussy and things like that, and how music, not only writing of music, but how the actual sound quality of the way things are recorded. 40 years ago, people were using tape. You know, when I was at Berkeley, I had to learn how to splice tape. And when you make an edit nowadays, it takes me 10 seconds on a computer. But back then, with tape, you'd have to scrub and listen to the where you had to make the cut, and you had to physically make a cut. And these are the things that I learned from guys like Kook Lowry and Eddie Grenga. They taught me how to do that when I was still in like ninth grade, when I was in high school. But music has gotten shorter and more simplified, and I'm sure Kevin Ross would say this because he's in that world of knowing that a record label, if you're going to submit a song to a record label, if you don't hit the hook within the first 30 seconds of the song, forget about it. They're going to throw it out. So you have, like, at least for that, for like a conventional pop record, you have to be into the hook within the first 30 to 45 seconds. If you go past a minute and you haven't established what the hook is, it's not good. Hence, like, I use Dua Lipa as an example all the time. The song starts off with the hook. It's only like 2 or 3 measures or whatever, and then she goes into the first verse, but they're establishing the hook right away. And, it's, for me personally, it's not the Quentin Tarantino way of writing music. It's not telling a story. Greg and I grew up listening to Miles Davis and Pat Metheny. And, you take a song like So What, which is here's the form of the song. The story being told is in the improvisational aspects of what's going on. So even though the song, that repeats over and over and over again, when it comes time for everyone, if it's, Cannonball Adderley, or if it's Miles or Bill Evans or whoever is playing on the song, they're investigating the storytelling through the improvisational aspects, which is why my brother and I both dove into improvising and learning how to improvise, and not necessarily learning improvise because we didn't know how to improvise, but like, okay, how do you tell a story? How do you build an improvisational solo? Greg, go ahead.
Right. And whether you like jazz or not, it's important to listen to that to see how many variations can be done with the same sort of like story. How many different interpretations can you get? Different sides of the story. That's what I think is missing today. And Mark, great point about how music has gotten shorter. But if you take a song, and this is like, because it's fresh on my mind, I'll be doing this tomorrow morning. A song like Little Help from My Friends by the Beatles, right? That song's like 2 minutes and 40 seconds long, which is very short. It's got 3 distinct sections. It's got a verse, it's got a chorus, it's got a nice bridge that goes to like a 6 minor type of deal, right? Very, very sophisticated and very complete in itself. It's not the same repetitive thing for 2 minutes. And I think this is what is tripping people up these days, because they hear a song, it's like the same 2 chord changes or 3 chord changes or 4, repeated over and over and over again with, like, like I said to Tiffany, what's replaced the solo is the that 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 that's replaced the solo, right? So if you take that out, I mean, is that really necessary anymore? Honestly, but if you take that out, what is left? Like, what is underneath that in the song, right? It's usually nothing. because they're trying to like fill space. Where you have a song like A Little Help from My Friends, no guitar solo in that song, but it's rich with information, lyrical information, sonic musical information. I mean, it's really a complete song. Very simple, but they'll take the same three changes and just do it two different ways.
Yeah.
They'll go D, A to E, and then E, D to A. Same three chords. That's what I think is missing from today's music is just, and the Beatles, let's face it, these guys were not college graduates. They did not go to music university. They weren't college professors. They didn't know what a Locrian scale or a Phrygian scale was, but they used it constantly because their ears were going there, right? They allowed themselves to open up and be like, oh, let's try this. George Harrison with the sitar, playing Indian music, which has a 15-note scale, not a 12-note scale, which we're used to. They were expanding upon, like, how do we make this more interesting, right? That is what's gone from music today. Everyone wants to be whatever, Dua Lipa, or who's the other guy who does like, releases like 50 songs a month? What's his name? Who is it? That's how important he is to me. I don't even know. Drake.
Oh,
That
got it.
That guy.
Well, you know what's funny too is that, and I know Tiffany, you got something you got to do, right? I don't want to.
Yes.
Right.
But
It just,
you know what? This is part one, y'all, because this
Yeah.
is good.
Wrap it
This
up.
is good right here. We'll wrap it up and then we'll hit it up next week again. Yeah, no, because my students, they'll call me and they'll be like, again, call. But anyways, what were you gonna say, Mark?
No, I was just going to use the example of what Greg said. It's like, so much time has elapsed from, we were talking last night, and I think, Greg, you said something like, we're in the year, whatever, 2022. Looking back to music from the 80s is like the 80s, us growing up in the 80s, looking back on the music of the 50s.
Yeah.
So, there was I had a video of the Gap Band, okay? And it was, I think it was early in the morning, right? I love the Gap Band. It's one of my all-time favorite bands. I love Charlie Wilson. And if you watch that video of them actually performing the song in a music video, I was watching the video because Charlie Wilson's going on tour with New Edition. And I'm very excited about that. I want to go see that. So, if you look at the outfits that they're wearing in the Gap Band video, my girlfriend, she's looking at the video and she's like, that looks just like Lil Nas. I'm like, yeah, where do you think he got it from?
Right.
Lil Nas with the white outfit with the tassels, like that kind of cowboy vibe. Charlie Wilson was doing that in the early 70s.
Yep.
People who were so over the top about Lady Gaga and her fashion, I said, well, you got to go check out Dale Bozio. Because Dale Bozio was wearing those outfits and doing all that flamboyant stuff in the 70s, in the late 70s, early 80s. And she had, guys in Frank Zappa's band. They were her actual band. Great musicians, but so much time has gone by where some of the younger people don't even know that existed. They don't know that Charlie Wilson wore that same Lil Nas outfit. He's like the OG of that. And like Dale Bozio and even like Debbie Harry, like Blondie, she's the OG of all this fashion that people think, oh, it's so innovative, and it's really not. It's just like so much time's gone by where people don't even know that existed. So it appears like they're innovating it, but you got to go back to the 70s and late 60s, 70s, and 80s to really see how that stuff really stood the test of time, and people are using it nowadays.
Yeah, and the only original thing that I've seen with fashion, with the new generation that's out today, is pajamas. They basically have gotten, well, no one really wore slippers and pajama bottoms. So
Yeah.
I'll try that out. I never remember Robert Plant wearing like a bathrobe. I mean, they would wear like kimonos and like robes, like capes and stuff. But
And definitely, you're leaving out the Island Boys.
The Island Boys?
Yeah, for innovative fashion.
Oh, okay.
All right. So look, let's wrap this up for part one, y'all. Part one. That was absolutely fabulous. Thank you guys
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you, Tiffany.
We
Thank you,
are
Tiffany.
ending Bring a Friend Week, y'all. Come on over and you can come jump in class. Who doesn't want to jump in class with two of these fellas right here, y'all? They keep it alive, interactive, fun, knowledgeable, and yes.
Remember this thing? Remember
That's
this
how
thing?
their brains are. That's Gregory and Mark.
That's for the next one. We're gonna talk about how this will make you a better musician. The secret sauce.
I need that. What is that? A stress ball?
No, it's one of those. I don't even know what is it called. Illumination ball.
I need it.
From the
All
70s.
right.
Yeah.
So Bring a Friend Week extended, and we got another surprise. We have one of my dear famous celebrity friends he made his mark in Disney's Camp Rock 2. His name is Matthew Finley. He also went to Berklee College of Music. He is now a record producer, a recording artist, songwriter, dancer, and he is doing his big thing in the Hollywood film scene. So he will be joining us for some workshops. Yes!
He's doing his big thing in Hollywood. I don't know what does that mean?
Listen, Greg, you're not supposed to say that on the live. I'm just
Okay, I'm trying to take it all in.
He's doing his thing. He's making his moves, and he's got a lot. He's got a lot
In
going
Hollywood?
on. Yes, he does.
Okay.
Go Google him. Go Google him, Greg.
Google him.
But you know, you two are the kings of TCS. We all know this. And so, guys, come free classes next week. Join them. Have some fun, and we will see you at the Pep Talk next week. I love you guys.
Thank you, Tiff.
Take care. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you. Bye. You guys are so funny. Idiots.
He's doing his big thing in Hollywood. I was like,
I'm still on. We're still
he's
live.
working that dong in Hollywood.